You're listening to the Angry Marks Podcast Network.
You're listening to the Undisputed Wrestling Show with your hosts, the Prophet, Rick Craig, the Bearded Wonder, Zane Paisley, and the Morning Star, William Huckabee.
The Undisputed Wrestling Show is now.
And now it is your beloved Prophet, Rick Craig, once again in the house with my cohorts of crime, the Bearded Wonder himself, Doc Thunderbeard, Zane Paisley. Zane, how are you, man?
I am doing fantastic. I'm getting over a cold, but I had a great wrestling week, and it's just been a great wrestling summer, and we got some big events coming up soon.
Yes, we are. We'll talk about that here shortly as well. Also, the NWA Continental Champion is in the house as well, the Morning Star, Will Huckabee. How are you, Will?
Hey, I'm here today, Rick. But I'm excited for today's show, so we're gonna make the most of it.
Hey, that's an effort in its own, right?
Exactly. And you know what? We're just gonna call this one in the ring. You know what I'm saying?
Got, as always, a great show tonight. Hour number 2, a.k.a. Chad Engle, the ICW United States Champion, will be joining us in the house. But you know what? First hour starts off with WWF, NWA, WCW star. Bob Cook is here. Bob, what's going on with you?
Hey, thanks for having me on the show. And, I was just thinking, the first time I met Zane, I wondered about that beard, so that's a weird coincidence, isn't it?
Hey, I am known for my beard in these circles.
It's beards and Zubaz, right, Zane?
I was rocking the Zubaz, that night. Yeah, I took those down on my trip to Florida, and I got some stellar reactions from the crowd that night.
I never owned
Before we get going too far, guys, let's get our plugs out of the way. First, we are brought to you by the Angry Marks Podcast Network for the very best in professional wrestling and mixed martial arts, news, and podcasts. www.AngryMarks.com. Also, we've been brought to you this week by Heroes and Legends number 5. Zane, give us the rundown. Where is it? When is it?
Oh, well, it is Saturday, July 25th in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and it's at the big ice rink there by the Glenbrook Mall. And I got the lineup here in just 1 second. I didn't know you were going to kick it to me so soon. The headliners of the night are going to be the Wolf Pack. We've got the Kevin Nash, Big Sexy Kevin Nash. We've got Razor Ramon, Scott Hall. We've got X-Pac, also known as the 1-2-3 Kid. We've got Teddy Long is going to be the GM that evening. Scotty Steiner's going to be there, and two of our favorites. Troy Miller's going to be fighting in a 4-way dance for the new Cruiserweight Championship, and Drew Skills will be defending and probably retaining, if we can help it, his Heroes and Legends Championship, World Championship against Hardcore Bob Holly. So it's going to be a great evening.
Yeah, don't forget Justin Credible is going to be there. The Nasty Boys will be in action. Just a great lineup. Drew will be defending against Hardcore Bob Holly for the Heroes and Legends Championship. So an outstanding night of wrestling action and a great fan fest as well. Come down, get your autographs, hang out with the wrestlers, hang out with the Undisputed Wrestling Show as Zane, myself, and yes, the Morning Star Will Huckabee will be there in Fort Wayne, Indiana. All right, got that out of the way now. We get to talk to Bob Cook. And what is more fun, Zane, than getting on Facebook every morning and reading a Bob Cook rant? Does that just not get your day going?
Oh, it's phenomenal, and one of my favorites is his reactions to Raw and SmackDown and Total Divas and all that good stuff.
I think the latest one I read, Bob, was when you were attacking the WWE for promoting their pay-per-views on the network, but not promoting it outside of the network where they can make some serious bucks.
Yeah, I just
Explain your thoughts, Bob.
I just mentioned that I think it's silly because you're talking on Monday Night Raw. It's their most watched show, whatever. Not as many people that used to watch it, but still their most watched show, and you don't even mention it. By the way, if you don't have the network, if you don't have access to the network, you still have access to the show if you get pay-per-view, but they don't even do that. And I know wrestling fans are ignorant, but most of them know that it's available to them. But there are a few out there that might not. We have to be helped along the way. So why not just even mention it in passing? Like, hey, by the way, it's still on pay-per-view, goofballs. If you can't afford the network, or you can't get the network, or your internet service is crap, you can still get it on pay-per-view with the remote.
So, Bob, do you just get your inspirations just watching? I mean, do you watch the WWE and the TNA and Ring of Honor and all of it and just weigh in on your comments, or is it something you have to sit home and dwell about for a while before it really sinks in and ticks you off?
Oh, no. I'm very positive for the most part. It's very rare that I say something negative, and that's not necessarily negative. I was just basically pointing out the obvious.
No, not really.
But I was more negative toward the President of the United States on my latest post, but got a lot of likes on it. Most people agree that he's a racist bastard. But anyways, let's go somewhere else.
We will. I remember reading a Bob Cook comment about Ring of Honor being bored after the first 2 minutes or something like that.
Well, I did mention this week that the most entertaining part of it is Maria.
Well, that's a fact.
I do like that Dalton Castle kid, though. He's funny as hell. He never breaks character. I think that's what I like about him.
He's amazing.
I assume it's a character. I hope it's a character.
And when the boys get down and let him sit on their bellies the way that is just hilarious, and he can't stop laughing.
Right, and he's a good worker too.
Yeah, he is. Bob, what got you hooked into this crazy world of wrestling?
I first got hooked on wrestling in 1975 when I turned on Championship Wrestling from Florida by accident, just because I met some kid here in Florida. I moved from Michigan, and I was playing basketball with the kid, and he said, "Hey, I got to go home." And I mean, what do you mean you got to go home? It's 7 o'clock. It's light out. He goes, "Oh, I got to go watch Championship Wrestling from Florida." And I said, "Well, you watch that crap?" I was like 11 years old, you know. And I went home with him. I watched it, and I was hooked instantly. It had Gordon Soley, and Terry Funk was going crazy. And it was really Terry Funk that got me hooked on wrestling and wanted to be a wrestler. And I've been hooked ever since. I'm still a wrestling fan just as much as I was when I was a kid. Most of the time I watch the shows as a fan. I don't sit there and nitpick them and expect them to change my life or have some type of religious experience every week. I watch them as a fan and I move on. If they do something really, really bad, I might mention it. And if they do something really good, I will mention it.
So did you have any grandeurs or any visions of becoming a wrestler? And if so, how did it happen? Did you just stumble into it, or how did that work for you?
Well, I wanted to be a wrestler ever since I first saw it, you know. I mean, I remember in high school, my yearbooks were signed to the next world champion, good luck on wrestling, you know, all that silly stuff. And back in those days, you didn't have the internet. You couldn't type up Google and find a wrestling school. I just got lucky. I was coming out of the Fort Homer Hesley Army, the legendary Fort Homer Hesley Army, where Dory Funk Jr. won the world title, Dusty won the world title, all the great battles, Eddie Graham and the great Malenko, you know. But I was coming out, and there was a flyer on my car, and it said, "Become a professional wrestler, travel the world, make big money, become a TV star." And it was the Great Malenko's Wrestling Academy. And I originally went to Tampa. It's a sportatorium where they tape Championship Wrestling from Florida. Wow. And after the show, I asked Gordon Nelson, an old-time wrestler who at that time was a referee and still wrestled occasionally. I asked him, "Hey, I was only 18 years old. I said, I want to be a wrestler. What do I got to do?" And he goes, "Well, you got to be in really good shape, and you come in for a tryout," which in those days meant they'll break your legs, stretch you, you know. I didn't know that at the time, and luckily I didn't have to find out. But I came out of that army and found that flyer, and I went to the Malenko school the next day, and that was it. I started the next week and started training, and, you know, never became a superstar, but I had a super good time, and that was good enough for me.
You know, a lot of the younger fans don't recall the career, obviously, of the great Malenko. What's your thoughts on him and his career and what he's meant to yours?
He meant everything to my career because he helped me. He was like a father figure to me. Anybody who was trained by Malenko and truly trained by him, who got to know him not only as a mentor and a trainer, but as a friend, he was like a father figure to all of us students, you know. He treated us all the same. He treated us with respect. He showed us the art of professional wrestling. He didn't stretch you. He didn't beat you down. He didn't browbeat you. He didn't call you names. He didn't spit on you. He taught you the art of wrestling, and each week you learn, and each week you want to come back and learn more. That's the kind of guy he was. And that, to me, is a trainer. You don't want guys to beat you up and stretch you. And you may think that's showing respect or learning respect for the business. That's bullcrap. And it always has been, in my opinion. It don't mean crap, because that's not what the business is about. It's not about stretching a guy. It's not about beating him down. It's not about seeing if you can do 5,000 squats the first day. It's about learning the art of professional wrestling and wanting to learn it and learn it right. And Malenko was that guy.
No, it's funny,
Am I rambling?
Bob. I mean, no, not at all. I totally agree with you. And that's what the interesting thing about Malenko is when you're talking about Boris Malenko, a lot of people just don't realize. I mean, yeah, they hear Dean Malenko and how great he is, and yes, he was. But I think a lot of people, if they look into their wrestling history, don't realize just how good Boris Malenko was and what a big star and attraction he was. You know, you think of all-time greats, and his name's rarely mentioned, and I think it's a tragedy.
Yeah, I mean,
travesty, I guess.
One guy who always speaks highly of the great Malenko is my favorite wrestler of all time, and that's Terry Funk. He even wrote about him in his book, that he learned so much from him. And we recently did a big thing here in Tampa called the Tampa Wrestling Fan Fest we did. And I had the honor of picking up Terry at the airport and hanging around with him all day, thanks to Joe Malenko, who knows that Terry's my idol, you know. So anytime I get a chance to see him, it's great. And I was even icing on the cake because we got to hang out with him all day. That was the day that Dusty passed away too, by the way, which sucked. But he talked about the great Malenko a lot during that day. And that was like a month ago. So, you know, people who know Malenko respect him, and he was a legend in the business, or is a legend in the business. People still talk about his battles with Eddie Graham and Dusty here in Florida. Yep. But I tell everybody, when they ask me who's the best wrestler I ever wrestled, I wrestled all the greats, right? The best wrestler I ever wrestled was Dean Malenko, hands down.
And why do you say that, Bob? I mean, we know his regimen. We know the Band of 1,000 Holds, all that. But why is he the best in the ring that you faced? I mean, you faced every great, you know, in the last 30 years, pretty much.
I think I probably say it, well, not only because I love and respect him, but because I worked him more often than other guys in longer periods of time. Like I worked with Steamboat and Flair, and you do TV matches, 5 minutes, 8 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever. And all those guys, and they're fantastic. No one ever hurt me. No one ever took advantage of me. They all tried their best to make me look good as I tried my best to make them look good. Not that they needed the help, but you know what I'm saying, doing my job. But down here in Florida, I got to wrestle with Dean, not only in the school, because he came by, him and Joe, and taught us in the beginning, but I got to work lots of indie shows with Dean. And in 89 to 93 or around there, we did a show here in Bradenton called Suncoast Pro Wrestling, where I played the Masked Superstar, and Dean was the top babyface, and I was the top heel, and we had all kinds of really good, 25, 35, 40-minute matches back and forth, so you get a better idea of how good someone is. That guy could drop kick you off the top rope, when you're coming off the ropes, right in your face, and you didn't even feel, but it looked like you took your head off. That is the art of wrestling. The art of wrestling is making it look real without it being real. Looking stiff without it being stiff. There's no badge of courage going back to the dressing room with a concussion or, a black eye or a bruised face. That's not the art of the business. And Dean was the best at that. Light as a feather, smooth as silk, perfect timing, a master of the game.
The interesting thing, too, Bob, is you were obviously a veteran of WCW, and they really hit their niche in the mid-'90s when they brought the cruiserweights in, and Dean and Eddie and Jericho and Benoit. And
what, Benoit? I'm just kidding.
Yeah, excuse me, right? They really carved out their niche, and Rey Mysterio, can't forget him either. And even Pete, and good grief, I could go on forever. But anyway, they really carved their niche in the mid-'90s with the cruiserweight. But now, when WCW was finally bought out by Vince, all of a sudden the cruiserweights were gone again. Are they missing the boat on not really pushing these guys like they were doing in the 90s when it electrified the fans and brought everybody back into wrestling again? People liked watching the smaller guys. Not everybody had to be a big, gigantic muscle head and 6'8" tall or whatever. Are they missing the boat? I mean, will we ever see the cruiserweights get their opportunity again to like the fans?
You would think they would. I mean, they got a lot of good cruiserweights out there. If they just give them an opportunity, I think they should bring back the belt and make a more serious go of it. I mean, they got so much time on the network. They should do a show just about the cruiserweights. Do a show just about the women. You know, like they do the Nexus show. Have Nexus the women. Have Nexus the cruiserweights or something like that. You know, because I like the lady wrestlers. I don't care what anybody says. I'll take the Divas all night. And I liked what they did on Monday Night Raw with the Divas.
I still haven't seen it yet, so I've heard it was phenomenal to watch, and you don't say that very often about the Divas. So I'm going to definitely make sure tonight I'm going to catch it and watch it and see Charlotte and Sasha and Becky and see what all the commotion is about. One of my favorite shows is on right now, and I'd be totally mad at you guys if it wasn't for the fact that I could tape Totally Divas on my DVR. Oh, I thought you meant the All-Star game, Bob.
It's on right now, and I love that show. I don't care what anybody says. Drama, hot women, in shape, sweating. What's not to love?
Hey, Rick, can I cut in for just a second?
Sure.
Bob, two of my good friends, Sign Guy and Rex, they do a podcast about Total Divas. It's called Total Dudes with Sign Guy and Rex. You need to check it out. It's very entertaining, fun. They goof on it, and they've got a whole conspiracy theory that JoJo is actually a time traveling mole. That's how they have all the cameras everywhere, because they put a little camera on her back, and that's why she's not featured as much anymore. You need to check out their show.
Would I get mad at it? Because I love the show. I'm not making a mockery of it.
I don't know. They watch every episode, and they break it down for everybody. So I'm entertained. I loved this.
They just have fun with it. They just have fun with it, don't they?
I loved the season premiere this year. I thought it was their best episode yet.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed the show, but again, I'm not like most wrestling fans or old wrestlers. I'm not bitter about the business at all. I don't hate today's business. I don't hate today's wrestling. I don't hate the way things are done. Sure, everything's different. It's everything changes. I take the good with the bad. I always have, but I don't watch every episode and pick it apart and expect it to change my life in any way. It's a 2 or 3 hour part of my life to pass the time, and when I'm done watching that, I watch something else.
This is the Undisputed Wrestling Show. We're talking to Bob Cook tonight, who is missing the Major League Baseball All-Star game. I mean,
what?
The Total Divas for our show tonight. And I'm going to tag in my partner, the Das Wunderbeard himself, Zane Paisley.
Well, Bob, once again, thank you so much for taking your time to be on our show tonight. As you mentioned, we met each other in Florida a few weeks ago at a great independent show. I couldn't believe all the talent that they had on there. C.J. Parker, who was recently in NXT. Rod Strong, who is Mr. Ring of Honor. And the night before, he had won the PWG championship, and they started Mount Rushmore 2.0. He was on the show. Santana, who is the NWA Women's Champion, was on the show.
I like her.
And, yeah, she was great. Santana Garrett's awesome. And then the headliner was Silver King versus Dr. Wagner Jr. Great show. You went there with your buddy Fred Ottman. Do you get a chance to go out to too many shows anymore?
I could go to a lot of shows if I wanted to. I don't normally like to go to shows, but Fred asked me, and I said, yeah. I mean, I love Fred. Hanging around him's always a blast. And I got to meet Santana. I got to shake her hand.
Very nice.
I told her right to her face, I think she's awesome. But anyways, so that was great. I'm thinking about going to the Shine show in Tampa next week, where Savannah's going to be there again, and my good friend Mulea Hasaka will be there. And hoping I can get Fred to go with me.
Well, you said that you don't really like to go to shows anymore. Why don't you like going to shows?
Well, that's a woman's show, an all-woman show. Now, those shows I like to go to. When you mentioned baseball, I was going to say, I don't watch any sports. I hate sports, but the greatest sport on earth is Legends League football. I love the Legends League football. Have you ever seen that? Look it up.
That's the former lingerie league, right?
That's right. It's the greatest sport ever known.
And Total Divas star and WWE star Summer Rae used to be in that league. Did you know that?
That's right. Yeah, I heard that.
Yeah. Well, I took a picture with you that night, and I posted it in my Facebook album, Mark Photos. And I had put Bob Cook, and I put parentheses WCW enhancement talent. And some of your fans and friends were kind of mocking me for that. What would be the appropriate caption for you for our listeners that don't know a whole lot about Bob Cook?
I always prefer the term, now get this, I know this is kind of wacky and it's out there, but I always prefer the term pro wrestler, or in this case, be former pro wrestler. Because most people who use the term enhancement talent or jobber, they think that's all you ever did in the business. And I was never the biggest star, but you know what? I was a Florida tag team champion. I beat Mike Graham and Steve Kern on TV, man. I beat them. Although I cheated. I put something in my mask, gave him a headbutt. Yes, we were the Mighty Yankees. But we cheated. And we had lots of matches all over Florida, and I made more money when I was a champion. And we did other things besides just the jizzobber gimmick. But when people think of you as a jobber, they think of you as a lower life form or an enhancement guy or a lower life form. They don't think of you as just a pro wrestler. And I got news for all the wrestling fans out there. Get close to your phone and listen up. Jobbers, enhancement talent go through the same stuff that the superstars do, and in some cases even more. We train in the same gyms. We learn the same moves. We take the same bumps. We travel the same roads. We don't fly the same airplanes because most of the time you didn't have that perk. But we still busted our ass in the ring night after night after night, year after year after year. So we're pro wrestlers as much as the superstars with a little bit less in our paycheck.
Well, and you know,
hang on a second, Zane, before you move on from that real quick. You know, Bob, we were talking to George South a few months back too, and you know what?
I love George.
That you or George South or any of those guys who were the so-called enhancement talent couldn't work or couldn't wrestle. Without you guys around, who do you think helps make the superstars look great? Because you could work and you could bump and you could do your jobs correctly.
I mean, I love George. He put me over in his book. George is a great guy. To me, the ultimate jobbers, and you know, back in the day, I never heard the term jobber. When you went to WCW or anywhere you went, when you were doing that particular form of the entertainment business, they didn't say the jobbers dressed there, the jobbers dressed there, the enhancement talent there. I dressed with Terry Funk, I dressed with Flair, I dressed with Steve-O, I dressed with Terry Taylor. They dressed in the same dressing room. You tended to hang around the people you traveled with because you traveled with the guys that did the TV, right? But you're still dressed in the same dressing room with the superstars, unless maybe it was Hulk Hogan or something, but he's Hulk Hogan. Of course he should have his private dressing room. I would too. I mean, who wants to hang around the riffraff?
Well, you know, we here at the Undisputed Wrestling Show have a tremendous respect for all those guys. You know, we've had Rip Rogers on.
Another great guy.
Yeah, tell us about the art of making that TV guy, that superstar, make him even better to the fans.
Well, I don't know if it's an art. It's just knowing how to work, basically. Because, you know, like I was going to say, when it comes to being a true jobber, and that what I always considered a jobber, if you go back, a lot of people like to say, boy, I wish they had the days of the old TBS show, you know, where every week it was, you know, 10 interviews and 15 squash matches and maybe Flair, Ronnie Garvin, or just they'll tease you with something, right? But if you go back and watch some of those shows, some of those so-called wrestlers didn't even know how to hit the ropes, couldn't take bumps. We're lucky if they even knew how to lace their boots up. We're fortunate that they even had boots. Most guys nowadays don't. But those are the true jobbers. You know, if you know how to work, I don't consider you a jobber. Ask Barry Horowitz about being a jobber, and he'll beat your ear off for an hour just yapping at you about why he's not a jobber. You know. But I don't know if there's an art to it. I mean, I always consider pro wrestling as an art anyways, right? In my opinion, this is one of my sayings, if you want to call it a saying. You know, pro wrestling at its absolute best is the greatest form of entertainment in the world. It's a true art form. And at its worst, it's the most pathetic form of entertainment in the world. The Big Show proves that almost every week. But and Kane, usually. But and I've always said anybody can be a pro wrestler. The hard part is being good at it. And again, the Big Show proves that every week.
Well, my final question for you right now, Bob, is there somebody that you can give us an example of that you saw early on in their career and you either thought, wow, this kid's going to really make it, or did someone ever prove you wrong where you didn't think that they were going to make it and they turned into something big?
I can give you two examples. One, I always thought Scott Hall was a good worker. Maybe people don't. I don't know. I always thought he was a great worker. I worked with him here in Florida. I actually made my most money ever work with him at the Orange Bowl in Miami in the first match at one of the Great American Bashes for the second War Games show they did. There was a huge crowd. Probably 25,000 nowadays. When I tell the story, it's closer to 40. But hey, we embellish. But
That's right.
I got the most money I ever made for one match. Match didn't last long, and I worked Scott several times here in Florida. He was light as a feather, really easy with me. And I know he beat a lot of guys up if he wanted to. I remember one time I was at a show and one of the guys came in I'd never met before. I'll call him a job or whatever. And he was working Scott, and I said, Scott, this guy's a real ass. He goes, oh, really? And he went in there and slapped him around. But anyways, so I always thought Scott could be somebody. And I was sitting in the dressing room with him in WCW years ago, and I said, if Vince McMahon ever gets a hold of you, man, he's going to make you a star. You're going to be somebody someday. And he went and did that. And that has nothing to do with me, but I told him that. And the other guy I never thought would be a star was when The Rock first came on the scene, right?
Uh-huh.
As that goofy gimmick, you're like, what the hell is this? And I remember meeting The Rock. I wrestled his father, right? This is kind of a funny story. I wrestled his father at a flea market in Newport Richey, Florida back in the 90s. And he had this big kid with him, and he introduced him as Dwayne. I didn't even think about it at that time. It was years later that he went, hey, that was The Rock. But he wasn't even wrestling then, But I wrestled his father at a flea market in front of about 200 people, and I remember having Rocky Johnson in a headlock, and I went, hey, Rock, you wrestled in Madison Square Garden before Sold Out Crowd. You're wrestling Bob Cook in the main event at a flea market. How you feel now? But I met The Rock at that point, and, I didn't know it, so, But he went on to be, and when he went to that WrestleMania and he did that gimmick where he's talking to that Jennifer Flowers, who, by the way, Evil Knievel banged back in the day. So proud of the man. When she was good looking back in the 70s, she even wrote about it in her book. Thank you, Evil. But anyways, and when he did that thing at the end where he went, if you smell what The Rock is cooking, that's when I went, this guy's going to be a star.
This is the Undisputed Wrestling Show on the Angry Marks Podcast Network. We have the great pleasure of speaking to Bob Cook tonight. And it's time to get the wrestler's perspective. Let's hook up with the NWA Continental Champion himself. Morning, Star Will Huckabee. You're in the ring with Bob Cook.
Well, Bob, first of all, I know Zane and Rick has already said it, but thank you once again for being a guest on the show. We really do appreciate it.
Well, I'd like to once again express my ability that I don't have a life. So thank you for that.
Now, obviously,
Bob,
we don't either. We do this every week.
Now, Bob, you already said you don't like the term enhancement talent, jobber, journeyman, or whatever. But without you, you weren't one of the top guys. But you traveled and worked for all the major companies and stuff. How difficult was it for you personally to be on the road 4 or 5 nights a week, different town, different city, different state, week in, week out for so many years in a row?
See, I loved it. For one, I was married, so it was a blessing, and to be on the road. But I always, when I was with WCW,
Bob, are you still married?
No, I'm not. My whore wife cheated on me a year ago with a 60-year-old man, and things kind of went south. Thanks for bringing it up. Thanks for bringing it up, man. This was going really good until you did. I'm over it now.
I'm sorry, Bob. Rick is such an asshole.
Yeah, at the time it hit me hard, but now I've never been happier now, so I'm over it. But
and that was Bob Cook. Thank you, Bob, for being. Go ahead, Will. Sorry.
Well, what was I saying? I forgot. Oh, when I worked for WCW, I was a guy who brought guys with me. Jody Hamilton had me rent the cars here in Florida, and then I would pick guys I wanted to bring with me. So I only picked guys that I liked and that I got along with. So my road trips were a blast because I went with my friends,
Now, I've got to ask you, because, I travel a lot also, not as much as you do. Because in this day and age, if you want to make it and stuff, you've got to travel and hit the roads. And I've done 4 or 5 matches, in 2 days. What was the most amount of matches you've done in, the span of, a weekend?
I remember one time doing probably 10 matches in a week when we worked for WCW, when we were working 2 matches a show, and then when we would do WCW, usually Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then we'd drive home, and then we'd work weekends on indie shows here in Florida too, Friday, Saturday, most every weekend for years. So, and I loved it, For me, I love being part of the business. When I was at one show, I couldn't wait to get to the next show. When we were in the cars, we talked about wrestling. When you got home, we talked about wrestling. It was just the way it was. And I miss it terribly. It was the greatest time of my life. I have no ill feelings toward the business. I loved being part of it, even in my jobber state, if you want to call it that. But I love being part of the business. I loved being a pro wrestler.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, the one thing I don't understand is these guys nowadays, I see a lot when I do go to indie shows occasionally, guys that don't have boots, don't have the proper gear. To me, that was the coolest part. When you walk into an arena with your street clothes on and then you go in the back and you dress up into your gimmick, your outfit, or whatever you want to call it, you're becoming not necessarily a character. If you're not a character, Bob Cook wasn't necessarily a character, he was just Bob Cook, but you're still not the same person you are as the guy coming in your street clothes. You know, you put your boots on, you put your trunks on, you got your knee pads, you tape up your fist. You're not the guy sitting in the front row like Kevin Owens comes out with his freaking white beater shirt. You're actually, at least he wears wrestling boots. I'll give him that.
Now you mentioned you're not bitter about the business, that you love you still love professional wrestling, whether it's changed or not, you still love it. But a lot of your contemporaries, don't feel the same way. They wish that things were how it was back in the 70s and 80s and maybe early 90s. What is your opinion on that, and why do you think they feel that way?
Well, I can say I wish it was that way, but it's not that way. So rather than sit here and just say, well, everything sucks today, or I don't watch that crap nowadays, it ain't the same, that's their opinion and that's their right. But I love wrestling as it is today. Everything changes, right? If wrestling in the 50s wouldn't have changed in the 60s and wouldn't have changed from the 60s to the 70s, I never would have been a fan. I wouldn't have been a fan of the 50s if it would have continued as it was in the 50s into the 70s, you know? So it all changes. And, I mean, the thing that pisses me off the most about these guys is you got guys that were real successful in the business, made money at least for their time, you know, were on the magazines, traveled, were stars in their era, and they're bitter. What are they bitter about, you know? It makes no sense to me. They didn't save their money. They got hooked on drugs. Boo-hoo. It's nothing to do with the business. The business never hurt anybody. Business gave you an opportunity to live your dream. What you did with that opportunity is your fault or your success. Like I had lots of opportunities to do better in wrestling. Dusty Rhodes gave me 4 chances in WCW to do better, and I blew every single one of them. Who do I blame? Do I blame Dusty? No. I blame Bob Cook as I sit here talking to you today.
Rick.
Now,
let's sue somebody.
Bob Cook. I mean, you can't blame Bob Cook.
No, why would you blame yourself? That makes no sense. It's not the American way to take responsibility for your own actions. We know that. Good God.
No, we can't ever do something like that, right?
It'll be unheard of. I mean, come on.
Bob, I'm going to get off the wrestling path for just a moment because every time I hear the name Bob Cook anymore, it harkens me back to my youth. And I'm sitting out in my driveway. I'm rearing up my toy. It's a Evel Knievel motorcycle with a pull strip and Evil's on there, and I'm pretending he's jumping Snake Canyon. Bob, what got you so obsessed with Evel Knievel? And for the fans who aren't aware, Bob Cook is the biggest Evel Knievel fan in the history of his existence.
I can tell you, if you were playing with an Evel Knievel toy that had a pull cord on it, you're not playing with an Evel Knievel toy. So that's not right. It was a wind-up thing. You put it on a little platform and you wound it up. And I still got mine that I had. I still got mine. I got Christmas 1973, the first one I ever got, and I still have it today. But still got my Evel Knievel lunch pail that I took to school in 1974. What got me hooked on Evel Knievel?
Hang on, it was over 40 years ago. Sue me.
Right. Well, you know. It didn't mean as much to you as it did to me, I guess. But,
probably not.
What it is you can't explain why somebody comes into your life and you put them on a pedestal over someone else, right? There's people who are obsessed with Elvis. There's people who are obsessed with this person or that person. And for whatever reason, when I was 5 years old, in 1968, I started hearing about this crazy guy that tried to jump the fountains in Caesar's Palace and didn't work out too well. And he went on to become a legend, but I got hooked on that. At 5 years old, I had a grandmother that would scour the newspapers because anytime Evil did something, it made news, and his legend grew, and my interest grew. And it's just something that stayed with me my entire life, and I collected his memorabilia, and I was fortunate enough to meet him in 1997 and become friends with him the last 10 years of his life. And he became almost like a second father to me in the sense that I could call him anytime I wanted. He would call me. He would give me advice when I needed it because he was a guy who lived the life. You know, he lived 100 lives. He traveled the world. He was world famous. He'd been there and done that. He was a member. He was the creator and the president of the Been There Done That Club. And yeah, he was the king in his day. I don't care what anybody says. Between Muhammad Ali and Evel Knievel, they're the two most famous people outside of crooked politicians. They came out of the 1970s. People still today know who they are. I mean, Evil just came out with a new movie that's coming out in August.
And isn't he still in the Guinness Book of World Records for the most bones broken?
Yeah, but that's fake. That's not real. I mean, I don't even know where the Guinness Book of World Records gets their information. Evil himself laughs at that. 444 bones. Who even has 444 bones? Nobody. He broke like 35 bones. I don't know where they come up with that crap, but Evil just, goes with it because it just creates more, when a legend grows by bullshit, mostly,
That's right.
Like when Evil did the Caesar's
right.
Palace jump, he liked to tell people he was in a coma for 30 days, but he really wasn't. But it draws more attention when they say, "Oh, you're in a coma for 30 days? Holy mackerel!" But But I love Evil. I love him. I miss him. I miss his late night phone calls. I miss everything about him. He's one of them. He was a great person to me. My family. He'd come to my house. He signed them with the mural I have painted on my living room wall. He was just a great person, and anybody that says otherwise. There's 3 rules in my house. Don't talk bad about Evel Knievel, Muhammad Ali, or Terry Funk. Otherwise, talk about anything you want. But those 3 guys, off limits. You can talk about them, but bad, no.
Yeah, that's right. It's interesting for us guys who grew up in the 70s, and, mine was Dr. J. I mean, I idolized Dr. J. I've got stuff all over my walls of Julius Erving, and, it's interesting in the days before the internet and how the legend of these individuals grow, and sometimes it's hard to separate what's the BS from what really happened, and sometimes I think that's the fun of it,
Oh yeah, I mean, I like the stories even if they're not true. I mean, there's always an element of truth to everything, but embellishment, and as history goes on, stories get even more fun to tell. But when it came to Evil, he was an original. There wasn't guys like him around. You can Julius Erving or whatever. I mean, there's thousands of basketball players. He stood out. But Evil was an original person doing something no one else did at that time. And I think that's what stood out with me. And he was not just your average person either. He did everything. He was the original custom made from head to toe guy. Everything he did was on a custom motorcycle. He wore custom outfits to fit his All-American theme, the red, white, and blue and the stars and all that. And everything he had was rolled into that package. And he was a pretty damn cool character too. The coolest name ever. Think about it.
Did you, obviously, well, not obviously, do you know Robbie very well?
No, I never met him. I saw him jump here in Florida back in 1990. I actually missed a wrestling show because of it and got yelled at by a friend of mine. I was supposed to be in the main event against him, and hey, man, Robbie Knievel's jumping 40 miles up the road over 30 cars. I can't be there. What do you mean you got to be there? Ain't going to happen. But he went there, and he jumped 30 cars in the rain, no less, and it was awesome.
Oh, wow.
But, yeah, like I said, I love Evil. He's always going to be part of my life, the memories and all that. And he even put me in his book. He came out with a book in 1999. He put a picture of me and my son in it, which I was proud of.
So, to your knowledge, Bob, are there any collectors who have more extensive of a collection than you?
Oh, a lot do now, because remember that part where I said earlier, I mentioned something about a wife and a whore and a 60-year-old man? Guess what?
Yeah,
it cost me a lot of things, and it cost me a lot of my collection. And there's a guy named Lathan McKay, who is a good friend of mine, who bought the bulk of my collection. So by bulk, I mean the big stuff. Like I had a replica rocket, a 13-foot rocket in my evil room, as I call it. It was an exact replica of the rocket that he used to jump the Snake River Canyon in 1974, September 8th, which just happened to be my wife's birthday. Thanks for bringing it up again. But anyways, and it was even painted by George Sedlak, which is the famous painter who painted all of Evil's motorcycles and helmets in the 70s. And I also had a replica of Evil's Harley Davidson XR 750, 1974, also painted by George, which I took it the day I bought it to show it to Evil, and he offered to buy it from me. And I was like, well, Evil, I just bought it. And he goes, oh, I don't need it. You take it and you take good care of it and enjoy it. I'll come down and take pictures with it. But, he offered to buy it the first day he saw it. But, I had to sell all that stuff. But Lathan, who is the biggest collector of Evil stuff, is Lathan McKay. He started this whole phenomenon that's building every day. There's going to be an Evil museum. This new movie's coming out. And Lathan has done the research, and he's unearthed all of Evil's great history that has been lost. Because Evil used to give stuff away. He's kind of like Elvis. He'd do a jump, and some guy would be there, hey, take my leathers. Do what you want with them. and he's like corralled all that stuff back up. He's got his first Harley Davidson. He's found his other Harley Davidson, found leathers, helmets, stuff that's been scattered around the country that's going to go in the museum. He just had Evil's awesome 18-wheeler restored to its glorious, original condition, something Evil always wanted to do and, obviously couldn't. So Lathan is the man who has the largest Evil collection, and I love him.
I know this is a wrestling podcast, but I'm going to ask one more Evil question because you know what? I didn't idolize him as much as you did, but you know what? He's a hero of mine. I dug him. What's one thing, a person who remembers the history of Evil Knievel, who remembers, the legend of Evil Knievel, but what's the one thing as a person who has met him and has known him as, extensively as you have, Bob, did not know about Evil, I guess?
Something I didn't know?
Something that maybe we don't know. I mean, the normal fan who hasn't had the opportunity to sit in Evil's house and talk to him like you have and know the man. What's one thing about Evil we wouldn't know that maybe would surprise us?
Well, he didn't smoke. I don't know, I mean, I don't think anything Evil did would surprise anyone. A lot of people probably don't know that he had sex with Lindsay Wagner and Lauren Hutton. They were very sexy women, and Ed Binick woman, and the star of the movie Viva Knievel, one of my favorite movies. No, but I don't know. I mean, I can just say a lot of Evil had a bad reputation for treating people not the best. So people be pleased to know that he treated me and my wife at the time very well, and my son. He was always awesome to me and him and her. Well, I don't know why he's awesome to her, the whore. He even kissed her on the cheek, and I want to punch her in the face. I don't get it.
This is the Undisputed Wrestling Show. Bob Cook is gracing us with his presence. We're going to kick it back over to ZP, Zane Paisley.
Bob, once again, thank you so much for coming on. Is there anything that you want to plug tonight that you got going on, or tell our listeners your social media or anything like that?
Well, let's see. I'm doing a show August 15th in Tampa. I'm not sure the exact place. You'll hear more about it on social media, I'm sure. But it's a Malenko show. Every year we do a show called the Boris Malenko Memorial Cup, where it's basically a reunion show for all of us old students and get together and talk about the great Malenko. But it's actually a show. We're wrestling and stuff, and I'm going to be wrestling on the show, probably just in a battle royal because I don't want to get hurt, But we're doing that August 15th in Tampa somewhere. The guy's supposed to give me the information, obviously. I'm doing a radio show in 2 weeks out of St. Pete, something called the Outside Interference Radio. Me and Fred Altman are going in live in the studio in St. Pete, Florida, on July 29th, actually. And I'll be spewing my rhetoric on Facebook whenever something comes to me. Like how about all these WWE lawsuits? Let's talk bad about all those guys.
Well, hey, sure, whatever you want to say.
No, I don't know. Billy Jack Haynes is a loon. That's one thing I'll say.
Well, we're scheduled to have him on here in a few weeks. Do you? Is there anything you want to pass along to him?
I'd say that I think he's a loon. I think he's a moron to think he deserves money from a company that he worked for a very short time, 30 years ago. And I don't even understand what he's trying to do.
Well, you'd mentioned the benefit show for Boris Malenko, the reunion show. Now, isn't Joe Malenko trying to get something going down there where it's at the old center where you guys wrestled?
Right, at the Fort Homer Hesley Armory, which is being turned into a Jewish youth center. They're dedicating a wall to the history of championship wrestling from Florida, and that's what we did that event June 11th for. The Fan Fest was to raise money for that wall because it's costing quite a lot of money, like $250,000. But it's going to be dedicated to the history of Florida wrestling, the real history of Florida wrestling, with Eddie Graham and Mike Graham, the great Mike Graham. I loved him. He was a great guy. And everybody who was part of wrestling history in Florida, probably not me, but, people that mattered. But so that's why they did that. And even if you want to send money for that, you can go to the GoFundMe.com/WrestlingTampa and donate to that cause. People gave a lot of money to a guy who needed a hip replacement who made millions, and we're just trying to raise a little money to remember history. So donate, wrestling fans. I even donated money to the guy who needed a hip replacement. You figure that out.
Will Huckabee, did you have any last things that you wanted to ask Bob?
But I do disagree with all these lawsuits. Let me go.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. Please, I got a plane flying over my apartment right now. Could y'all hear that in the background?
What's that, Will?
I said, you hear the plane in the background?
No. I thought that was a submarine.
No. Bob, I live right across the street.
Toilet.
No, I live across the street from USMC Cherry Point, which is the largest Marine Corps air station in the world. So what you just heard in the background was what they call the sound of freedom. Remember that? Yeah, I was going to ask you, Bob, they call you the man with the best punch. Do I got it correctly? Did I say it right?
Well, that's what some people say. You hear a lot of rumors.
Now I'm going to ask you, in your opinion, top 3 best punches in professional wrestling, in your opinion, not including yourself.
In the history of wrestling?
In your opinion, best 3 punches.
Well, 3, wow. In my opinion, the best puncher of all time is Jerry Lawler. Most guys punch one way, right? They use the right hand, usually only punch one way. Jerry Lawler could punch anyway. Roundhouses, uppercuts, straight to the face, straight to the nose, straight to the forehead, left, rights. It didn't matter, and every one of them looked good when he was on. And nobody ever threw a punch as good as Jerry Lawler when he was on. So if you want to ask who the absolute best ever was, Jerry Lawler, in my opinion. A lot of guys threw great. I think Terry Funk had an awesome punch. Dick
Terry
Murdoch
Funk almost hit me, Bob.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was at a NWA show back in the late 80s, and Terry was wrestling Sting. It's when they were having that big feud, and I was in the front row, and Sting was pattering him a little bit, and Terry threw one of those wild, wacky punches, and I swear if I didn't duck and stop, he would have nailed me.
Yeah, that was an awesome time. To me, that was my favorite, not only because I was there all the time, but that was my favorite year for WCW. Terry carried that whole year at 89.
Yep, his feud with Sting and Flair both was just phenomenal.
Yeah, it was awesome stuff.
Now, Bob, my next question. You have so much experience. You traveled so many different places in the world and stuff. Any plans on, training guys, helping guys out, mentoring younger wrestlers today?
Me help them?
Yes, sir.
See, I'm a horrible person for that. I tried to train some people here years ago. My friend and my son wanted to be wrestlers, and we ran across these guys that had a ring, and we went over there, and they're nice enough guys, but they didn't know what the hell they were doing. So I bought a ring with my friend, and I trained my son and him, and we tried to get some other guys, and we did. But I'm a horrible trainer because I don't have patience. When I was a kid, I kind of did that backyard wrestling crap, not the fluorescent lights and all the stupid crap you see now or used to see, but copy what they did on TV and had a decent idea of what was going on when I went to the Malenko school. Obviously, he perfected it and corrected me on the lefts and rights and whatever, but I had a relatively good idea and I learned quick. Whereas when somebody would come here to learn from me and they didn't learn quick, guess what? I went crazy and I didn't have the patience for it. So it's not something I could ever do. And I've heard people ask me before to teach people how to punch and stuff. You can't teach somebody how to punch. You tell them to watch somebody who throws a good punch and copy it and practice. That's another one of my models. Watch, copy, perfect. Watch somebody that does something good, copy it, and then perfect it as your own. The guy who throws a good punch, watch Dick Murdoch, copy how he does it. Jerry Lawler, copy how he does it. Terry Funk, copy how he does it. And you're going to have 4 different versions of a punch, and you're going to be a guy that looks 4 times better than everybody else.
Bob, that brings up another point. You were talking about, trainers that stretched people out and tried to show them, I guess, the horrors of the business instead of trying to train them. I guess, what's your thoughts on Bill DeMott and the things you've heard about him in the training center?
When I watched the old Tough Enough show with Steve Austin, which was my favorite, because you ever watch that show? Austin was so awesome in that when he, at the end of the show, that last 15 minutes where he would ridicule the 3 lowest people of the week. That was some of the best television ever. But DeMott on that show, he would treat the kids bad, but at the end of here and there, he would show he had a heart. But if any of what they're saying is true about him, I don't think that's necessary. I don't think you have to browbeat somebody to make them respect the business. If you train somebody correctly, the natural progress of the business is going to be respected because it's a rough business. Taking bumps, just a normal bump as you work your matches and learn how to take bumps is rough enough. You don't have to beat somebody up and stretch him and show them that, oh, I could really stretch you. I could really hurt you if I wanted to. Big deal. That's not how the wrestling business works. I worked with everybody, and no one ever stretched me. No one ever tried to take advantage of me. No one ever purposely hurt me. And I worked with the Steiners, damn it, and they never hurt me. And, you know, other than Vader, who hurt everybody, or a dick like Buzz Sawyer, who would hurt guys, most guys didn't hurt you, you know. I understand learning, like Malenko showed us moves where we could protect ourselves outside the business or in the business if someone tried that, but he didn't do it to prove that he could beat your ass, you know. Or didn't feel he needed to show you that, you know, this is a rough business. You learned it by being in it, and it was a rough business. You don't have to beat somebody up to prove it. I've never understood that mentality, because you're not going to want students to come back if they're getting beat up every week. Students aren't going to want to come back, I should say. If you're a good teacher, your main purpose should be to teach correctly and make your students want to learn, and every week beg to come back, look forward to coming back. And if they're getting beat up, they're not going to come back happy. They're not going to want to learn, right? I mean, or am I wrong?
You're right.
I think you're right. Absolutely.
And I hear a lot of guys today think that. It's like, oh, they're a pussy, they're a sissy, oh, they can't take it, they shouldn't be in the business. Well, bull crap. That's not what the business is. The very first day the great Malenko took us in the ring, he said, this is an art. It is a work. It is not a competition. Your competition is trying to put on the best match of the night, but it's not a competition. You are working together to create the illusion of an actual wrestling match. And if you do it well, people will believe. And that's your goal, is to make them believe. And I still believe with all my heart that if you're good enough and you care enough, you can still make the fans believe. Everybody else can think every match on the show is crap, but if you're good enough, they'll think yours was real. I have a newspaper clipping where we were at a show, me and a guy named Rick Ryder, and the newspaper clipping headline says, "Think wrestling's fake? Think again." And the whole story was about the fact that me and Rick Ryder went out there and beat the crap out of each other. Not for real. We weren't stiffing each other. We were bleeding because we were dumb enough to cut our heads, but we weren't stiffing each other. We weren't giving each other concussions. We were throwing punches that were worked because we knew the art, taught to us by an artist, and the people believed, including a sports writer who didn't have any concept of what wrestling was. So I still believe that if you're good enough and you care enough, you can make people believe. And that should be your goal, because to me, that's the art, right? The art of wrestling is making it believable without it actually being real. And that's, again, Malenko taught us that. You know, nobody likes a crowbar. The art is to make it look stiff without it being stiff, make it look real without it being real. That's the art. Anybody can stiff somebody. Whoop-de-doo, I stiffed him. So what? Oh, it looked real. Well, that's because it was. It's better to have a punch where someone goes, my God, it looks like you took his head off, and the guy didn't even feel it. That's an art, because not everybody can do that.
Now, Bob, with that being said right there, my final question before I get it back to Rick. Favorite guy is a two-part question. Favorite guy to work with and favorite city to work in?
As far as cities, I really don't know. I mean, I loved working in Sarasota, which I used to go to as a kid. Here in Florida, you know, at the Robarts Arena, and that was always awesome. One of my funnest matches ever was against my old partner, Jerry Gregg. I was the babyface, he was the heel, and I'm from that area, so I got good pops, I got to win and everything. That's right, I got to win. But that was a fun time. My favorite opponent ever, believe it or not, is Rick Ryder, that I mentioned, is a guy that I trained, and we worked independent shows here in Florida all over for 10 years, more often than not, main events, semi-main events, in cage matches, bull rope matches, chain matches, state fist matches, and it was just a blast. We have people still talk about them today that meet me or see me to play a show or something. Yeah, I know that's not a big deal, but it means something to me. But and as far as the fans, I don't really care if they enjoyed it. They acted like they did. But Rick and I always had a blast, and we beat the crap out of each other, so they thought. And, you know, he was my favorite opponent as far as somebody that people don't know. But if you want to talk about people in big-time wrestling, one of my favorites, obviously, there's so many. Bobby Eaton, Ricky Steamboat, Cactus Jack, who, by the way, just mentioned me at his show in Tampa as having the best punch in the history of wrestling. How awesome is that? Mentioned by Mick Foley. He mentioned it on his DVD, too, by God.
All right, Bob, the rumors are still out there of you and your own podcast. What's going on?
You know, a friend and I were going to do that a few months ago. We even bought the equipment, you know, mixer, mics, and I don't have patience. You know, I have a very short attention span, something that seems like a good idea, and when I start doing it, I'm like, what am I going to say? You feel stupid. And I have somebody, actually this guy that I'm doing the radio show in 2 weeks wants to put me on some network he has, and I don't know if I'll do it. I mean, sometimes I don't know what I'll say, I just ramble, I'll say the same thing every week. I don't know. It'd be fun to a degree if I take calls, because I hate people for the most part, especially wrestling fans, because nowadays wrestling fans aren't really wrestling fans, they're critics. They all have to have their voice. They watch Raw and they go, this show sucked, or that show sucked, or Cena sucks. Oh, really? Is that why he's had the greatest matches in Raw history? No. But he had some great matches the last few weeks, so he doesn't suck. And it's, wrestling fans don't know what they're talking about. They don't know what they want. They don't know what they like. If they see something great, they don't realize it. So they piss me off.
And they don't want the business to succeed.
Right, that's another thing. How about just watching it and enjoying it for what it is? Again, I get into that argument.
Let's hate on TNA and let it go out of business. That's real good for the business.
Yeah, and I like TNA, especially the ladies.
I do too.
I like Velvet Sky.
Bob, we have another guest on here in the second hour, and we're bringing him on a little bit early because he wants to say hi to you.
Oh, cool.
ICW, Intense Championship Wrestling, United States Champion, a.k.a. the artist known as Chad Engle. Chad, how you doing, bud?
Pretty good, and you guys?
Doing really well. Did you have a question you wanted to ask Mr. Cook?
Not necessarily a question. I just wanted to say I appreciate you purchased some of my art and stuff like that. You've gotten it online, I believe, and things. And so I just wanted to say, personally, thank you very much for purchasing my art.
Oh, is that the ones with Terry Funk and Flair? And
yes.
Yeah, I have that in
the
Cooker's.
Outstanding caricatures, Bob.
I have that hanging in the Cooker's gym.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen that online.
Yeah, that's good stuff. I like that kind of stuff. I am a pro wrestling memorabilia mark. I love the action figures and that kind of stuff. If you watch my Facebook, anytime I buy an action figure, I post it like a moron.
You just got a Earthquake, didn't you?
That's right. Yes, I did.
Yeah.
And guess who wants an Earthquake? Fred Altman, and we're gonna get him one.
Yeah, Fred deserves an Earthquake, doesn't he?
Now, Bob, are you happy that we didn't ask you why the sky is blue?
Yeah, because I forgot to Google it.
Okay.
All right.
But I'm a little upset we didn't talk about teen pregnancy.
Hey,
because it reminds me of
from Bob Cook. Here we go.
It reminds me of that time in Atlanta with this. Never mind. Although it was a funny moment because never mind. It is a great Mike Graham story, though.
Bob, before we let you go, your thoughts on Dusty before we bring Chad in.
To me personally, it was obviously a lot of wrestling guys. It was heartbreaking because Dusty was such a huge part of my childhood. As a kid, I was conflicted of whether I was a fan or not because I was a fan of the bad guys mostly. So anytime Dusty was getting beat up, I was in heaven. Whether it was the Spoiler, Terry Funk, or Killer Carl Cox, or Ox Baker, God rest his soul. But we heard about Dusty. We had just dropped Terry Funk off at his hotel when we picked him up at the airport. And we're going to go get lunch and come back and pick him up. And he went into his room, and we got in the car, and I looked, and there was a text from a friend of mine that said, Dusty died. I said, you got to be shitting me. And we all started crying, I mean, Dusty was a huge part of my childhood, and he was like one of the biggest stars in wrestling history. Whatever, I've never heard anybody say anything bad about Dusty unless there was somebody who thought they should have got a push and didn't. But again, Dusty tried to help me 4 times, and I blew every one of them, but he was always awesome to me. And Dustin also was awesome. That's one of my claims to fame is I had Dustin Rhodes' very first pro wrestling match.
Oh,
and his second and third. Huh?
I was not aware of that.
Yes, and his first and his second and his third. One of them was taped for TV. They claim his first, but it was actually his second that was taped for TV. But it was me. And guess what? I won. Okay,
what?
I lied. You don't know that, though. There's no video of the very first one, so I can say I won and no one knows the difference. It was just
say whatever you want, right?
Yeah, it was just in a little stinking, armory thing, probably 100 people there. But I do remember there was a pool table in the dressing room. I remember that.
This is the Undisputed Wrestling Show. We want to thank Bob Cook for joining us tonight. Bob, we're going to have to get you back on so we can talk some more wrestling with you. But
I appreciate
thank you so very much for your time tonight. We love hearing the old stories and hearing about Evel Knievel. So thank you so much.
I appreciate you having me on.
Bob Cook, ladies and gentlemen. Take care, Bob. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you.
And without further ado, let's get into hour number 2. You've already heard him once, a.k.a. Chad Ingle's in the house. At this point, it's time for the Prophet to depart the premises. That's what Chad Engle does to me. No, just kidding, of course. But hour number 2 is brought to you by Zane Paisley and the Morning Star, Will Huckabee, and my friend Chad Engle. Take it away, Jeff.
Well, thank you, Prophet. We appreciate you joining us this evening. Just want to remind all of our listeners that this is the Undisputed Wrestling Show. You can find out more about us at www.theundisputedwrestlingshow.weebly. That's WEEBLY.com. You can see our upcoming guests, our archive shows, check out everything. We will be at Heroes and Legends Fan Fest, Heroes and Legends 5. That's Saturday, July 25th at the Sport One Parkview Ice House. It's a big old hockey rink in Fort Wayne, Indiana. That's Saturday, July 25th. Get more information on that at heroesandlegendswrestling.com. We've got a bunch of great stars, Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, Sean Waltman, Katie Lee Burchell, one of my favorites, Shelly Martinez, her old partner, Kevin Thorne's going to be there as well, Scott Steiner, Chavo Guerrero Jr., Gorgeous George. In the main event, we've got Drew Skills versus Hardcore Holly. Jake Oman's going to be taking on Justin Credible. The Nasty Boys are taking on the Circle City Collabro. Congo Kong's going to be in action. Shannon Moore's going to be taking on Anthony Totali. Mark Vandy is scheduled to wrestle Austin Aries. Juventud Guerrera is scheduled to take on Sugar Dunkerton, which everybody likes Sugar D. And an awesome match for the new HLW, Heroes and Legends Wrestling Cruiserweight Championship. We got a big 6-way scramble. Eli McFly, Owen Travers, Alexander S. Kirk, Nick Cutler, Prime Cut Nick Cutler, the Psycho Jack Thriller, Serial Killer Jack Thriller, and one of our favorites, the franchise Troy Miller. So it's going to be an awesome show. Once again, this is the Wonderbeard, Das Wonderbeard, the Bearded Wonder, Zane Paisley, and we've got the Morning Star, the NWA Continental Champion, Will Huckabee. Will, what'd you think of the first hour? Good stuff?
Man, Bob Cook is amazing. That's one of those interviews that you know is going to be good, but you didn't realize it was going to be that great. Like, if he's going to get his own podcast, I would definitely pay attention and tune into it every week.
Well, maybe Stevie J or Killer Kev should send out some feelers to get him part of the Angry Marks Podcast Network roster. I think that'd be an entertaining show, to say the least.
I think he's going to have to be a part of Totally Dudes or whatever. I realized during the podcast, during his interview, and I don't know if you caught on to it, but he really likes female wrestlers.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does. And it's not an ironic way either. He really enjoys female wrestling. And, that's great because that is making a huge comeback.
I wanted to tell him as much as... What was that?
I don't know, buddy.
I wanted to tell him if he enjoyed Sean wrestling, he needs to check out Queens of Combat because they have like a phenomenal roster of female talent and stuff.
Well, excellent. Well, as our second hour guest, one of my favorite guys, he is the Intense Championship Wrestling United States Heavyweight Champion. He is also an accomplished artist. We've got the artist known as Chad Engle. Chad, how are you this evening?
Doing pretty well. And you guys?
We are doing excellent. We are flying high tonight.
Sounds good. Yeah, but interviews with Bob Cook, that sounded excellent.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Now, I had mentioned Heroes and Legends Wrestling 5 in Fort Wayne on July 25th. You're going to be there too, right?
Correct. Yeah, I'll have a table set up, and as a vendor, selling some of the posters that I've created with the characters of different wrestlers from different eras, and then doing live characters of anybody that wants to stop by and purchase something like that.
Well, and on our Facebook page, you guys can see some of the work that Chad Engle has done for us. Just awesome job. Where can our listeners check out more of your artwork?
Of course, on Facebook, it's just under Chad Engle Art. And also I've got a store up on storeenvy.com. It's Chad Engle Art. Also Twitter and Instagram at Chad Engle Art.
That's awesome. Which do you want to talk about first, Chad? Do you want to talk about wrestling? Or you want to talk about your art career?
Yeah, whatever. They kind of intertwine a little bit and stuff.
Well,
so it's whatever you guys want to throw at.
Well, tell us how you got started in the crazy world of professional wrestling.
First recollection of wrestling at all would actually be my dad's uncle, my great uncle. They'd just come over to the house and just to visit and chit chat and things like that. And my dad would be in mid sentence of some kind of story or whatever he was going through that day at work and things. And my uncle would hold his hand up and he was like, "What time is it? What time is it?" Dad, 8 o'clock. Turn to TBS. So my dad, of course, we didn't have a remote back then. Kind of shows you how old I am. Turned over to TBS, so I'd click it over and stuff, and all of a sudden NWA would be on in that little tiny studio, and these huge mountain of men would come out in face paint and robes and long hair and things, and I'm just in awe, over this stuff. I'm like, what in the world is this, And one of the things that I remember that stands out to me, and of course, with Dusty passing recently, is when the Road Warriors attack him and take their spike off, stick it in his eye, and make him bleed everywhere in that studio. And it just kind of hooked me from there. And then, of course, my best friend from second grade on up till even to this day, he was a big WWF fan, and so he kind of hooked me on them. And so we started watching all that kind of stuff. But that was what kind of got me into it. It was just watching basically the theatrics, the colors, the presence of it, just what they embodied, going out there with these 300-pound men doing these flips and slams and things like that. Just kind of for somebody that not necessarily had an artistic thing at that point, but it was just something that was triggered by it, and I was kind of hooked. I'd say probably 6 or 7, 8 years old, somewhere around in there.
Well, I've been to a few wrestling shows with you, and my kids come to watch you wrestle, and I just think it's awesome that my 9 and 7-year-old kids come and they idolize you, Chad Engle. So, and we recently attended a Chikara show in Indianapolis together, and my son was honored to sit next to you. He thought it was the best thing ever.
Well, I appreciate that. That was really cool.
Well, no, I appreciate you hanging out with us. That was very cool. So, you were a fan as a kid. How did being a fan, how did you transition into the world of professional wrestling?
I mean, of course, just, pretty much like anybody. You watch it, and then in the back of your mind, ignorantly, you think, I could do that. And so basically, you kind of have to put your money where your mouth is and step in there and do it at one point. And honestly, I kind of went through a dark point in my life and stuff. Went through a divorce and everything. Had to move back with my parents, all that kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden, I flipped through the paper, which I'm not a reader by any means. I flipped through the local newspaper, and honestly, it was probably an 1.5 by inch ad. And like the one ads saying that there was some pro wrestling coming to town. They wanted somebody to do ad sales and security and this and that and stuff. Call this number, meet at this time and stuff. And so I thought, well, now's my chance. I don't have any ties to anything or anybody, so now's my chance. So I called the number, went and did the show with them, tried to do some ad sales. Nobody bought anything. Went and did the security for them. I'm thinking, okay, as soon as the show's over with, I'm going to go forward and talk to them. And 2 of their, I guess, stars, whatever, got into it legitly in the ring. The wrestlers come out. The one trainer shoves me between the one guy and another one, tells me to take him outside to cool off and stuff. He about decks me and then realizes that I don't know who this guy is. So he kind of chills out and tells me that he just hates the guy and doesn't like to work with him and stuff. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to do this. This is ridiculous, And about 6 months later, they show back up in town again, unannounced. There's no posters or anything. And I'm like, okay, it's now or never. So at the end of the show, I walked up and I said, well, who do I talk to get trained? They're like, go over to the bad guy, ask him. So he tells me when to show up, and Logansport have X amount of dollars for the tryout fee, and then another amount for paperwork if I can make it. So I come with all of it, give it to him in hand, and say, here. And he's like, no, just give me this much first. The rest is if you make it, which was another $100. And I'm like, you can keep the $100 because I'm going to make it. It's something I've wanted to do. And he thought I was just being arrogant. I just wanted to be a pro wrestler. And so apparently everybody else had to do like 15 push-ups and stuff. And I had to end up doing like 30 to 50 Hindu squats, push-ups, do all these squat thrusts, all this other stuff. And I'm like, what in the world? I mean, I was the only trainee or person that tried to go through a training session that got power bombed and stuff, and because he just thought I was just being arrogant, and I was just like, no, I wanted to be a pro wrestler and stuff. So after that, I trained for about a year, and then they gave me my first match, and luckily it was back here in my hometown.
Well, tell our listeners where that is.
I live in Lebanon, Indiana, and so that was on November 18th of 2000, and that was on my dad's birthday in my hometown. So I just all I ever wanted to do was get into a pro ring in front of a big crowd one time, and that was on my dad's birthday in my hometown. And that was my crowning point of my dream at that point. So then I had to set other goals after that.
And that's been almost 15 years. That's amazing. That's great. Well, I'm going to kick it over to the NWA Continental Champion, the Morning Star, Will Huckabee. Will, what do you have for the artist known as Chad Engle?
Well, first of all, Chad, it's good talking to you again, man. We appreciate you helping us out hosting the show, last week. Or was the week before last? I can't remember. I have too many concussions.
No, not a problem. I know there's somebody missing in action, Zane.
Yeah.
Yes.
Every once in a while things come up, and I apologize to our listeners.
Yeah, it's all right, Zane. Chad did a great job filling in for you, trust me.
Is he trying to take my spot?
I think so. I think that Chad might be your version of Troy Miller for me.
Ooh.
I learned from the best.
See? Told you, Zane. Told you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Chad, I was going to ask you, we talked about your wrestling career and stuff. Which came first? You making drawings of professional wrestlers, or are you getting into the business of professional wrestling?
Actually doing the drawings came first. That I think started probably in 1991, somewhere around in there. I've always enjoyed caricatures for one thing. I mean, just the old Mad magazines and the TV Guide covers with some of the caricatures on the front of them. So I always kind of collected those things just to, look at. But then kind of digging into it a little bit, and then I remember one of them was, I know one of the first ones that I had finished doing was X-Pac, which I'm hoping to get autographed at Heroes and Legends on July 25th in Fort Wayne. She plugged there. But I'm trying to hope that it was a Raw magazine cover with X-Pac's face on the front, and then flip it open, and then there was him doing the crotch chop with pyros in the background and stuff. And I thought, that'd be a cool picture, put those two together and stuff. So I did, and so that's the X-Pac that you see on my Facebook page and things. So that started it, and then I think I did Cactus Jack and a couple others, and then I was able to actually get Cactus Jack to autograph the one I did of him at Indianapolis Ice hockey game one time that he was there as I think he was doing a commissioner gimmick in WWE at the time, and so I was able to give him a copy of it and everything, and so that was a cool little story.
I was going to ask you, what is the usual response to a lot of these guys? Because I'm assuming that you really don't know them, especially Mick Foley, X-Pac. You don't really know these guys. You make your drawings of them and stuff, your paintings, and then you show them. What's usually the response when they finally see it?
Most of them so far have all been pleasantly surprised by him, I guess. Mick Foley's, his was the first one I was going to try to get an autograph on. I wasn't sure if you had to buy a picture of theirs and all that kind of stuff. But so I'll just give it a shot. So I go to the hockey game. I'm sitting ringside, right behind the players' bench, right with the wives and stuff. And they were like, all right, Mick Foley's going to drop the puck, and then he's going to go up to level 5 and sign autographs. And he drops the puck, and I'm like, well, I'm out of here. Everybody's kind of looked at me like, the game's getting ready to start. And I'm like, screw that. Mick's going to be signing autographs. So I go up, and no lie, I get up the steps, and the elevator opens up, and him and his assistant come walking off the elevator, and he's like, so where are you heading to? And I'm like, wherever you're heading, that's where I'm following. I'm going to get an autograph. I'm going to get it on this, and actually I have a copy of it for you, so I give him a copy, and he's standing in front of a dumpster with his hand up doing the bang-bang thing in the caricature, and he stops and slaps me in the chest a little bit and kind of shows his assistant there, and he's like, look at this. He goes, I get a lot of crap from fans. He goes, but this is one of the funniest things I've seen. He goes, it's even got underarm hair on it. This is hilarious. And he kept laughing. So I waited hour in line or whatever it was to get my autograph things. And so as soon as I get up there, he has a stack of the commissioner pictures, and he about knocks them off the table. He goes, where's my copy at? His assistant lifts them up. She goes, it's right here. Don't worry about it. And he's like, okay. He signs it, Cactus Jack, puts the date on it. It was in October 90-something. And so, that was just one of the cool things where it was one of those where even meeting Bob Holly at one of the Heroes and Legends shows, I wasn't too sure on, how Bob would kind of react to it. And it was one of those where he'd kind of tweeted it out a little bit, but I didn't know if he would appreciate it or not, just for the fact that what you've heard about him in the past. And so I get up there, and he's like, oh, you're the guy that did this? I'm like, yeah. He stood up, shook my hand, smiled and stuff, and he goes, man, I love this. And his wife started laughing, and she's like, you nailed his eyebrows, because I made them huge and thick and black and stuff. And it's one of those where, you see that, you see this, supposedly tough dude that's just, rip your head off and spit down your neck kind of thing. He gets a kick out of it and things. The BWO, they were really cool about theirs. Mosh and Thrash, the headbangers, they use theirs as their screensaver on their phones. Chris Masters has been another one, real excellent one to post it out there and get a lot of people to help follow me and different things on Facebook and Twitter and things. So, a lot of them have, appreciated it as, a goofy art form, compared to their art form and stuff. And so a lot of them, will grab it. I've said a couple, probably, I'd say about 4 out of I think my wife said that we just looked through them, and we've got almost 140 characters that I've done already. There's been about 4 or 5 that'll, look at it, sign it, and then hand it back to me and not say anything at all. So I'm not sure if they're just having a bad day or they just don't like funny art.
Let me ask you a question. Because you obviously say you've done, so let's say you have a great record, 136 out of 40 guys love it. So have you had any guys, because you're one of the boys, and boys always talk, especially at that level, these guys are all friends and stuff like, hey, look at this guy, you're saying this guy made this picture of me and stuff, and they're showing it off. Have you had anybody contact you and say, hey kid, where's my picture at?
Yeah, actually I've had Axel Rotten. He was one of them that looked me up and was wanting me to do one of him. And I've had a couple other, more of an independent level do that and stuff, but, I keep kind of not necessarily blowing them off, but, I'm doing these for different shows and different things like that, and so I have all these ahead of you before I can get to you kind of thing. But, most of it's, been a pretty decent outpouring, but it's not really, people are knocking down my door to have one done by me yet.
Now, I'm asking that because obviously everybody knows that no matter, I understand that Sugar D and, X-Pac and Scott Hall and Kevin Nash and all of these guys are going to be at Heroes and Legends. But the big news is the fact is that I'm going to be at Heroes and Legends. So I'm assuming that when I walk past your vendor's table, that there's going to be a picture of William Huckabee with the NWA Continental Championship at your vendor table, right? Just me, not with Zane, not with Rick, not with Kevin, just me.
Yeah, there might be. You just never know. We might have to get your ticket to Heroes and Legends July 25th and find out.
Well,
Oh!
well, I do know a new Chad Engle product that will be there. I don't think you're going to like this as well. I saw a sneak peek of the Heroes and Legends Wrestling World Heavyweight Champion, Drew Skills, his new shirt that's been done by Chad Engle.
Oh, sweet.
Yep. He's looked me up last year and then this year also. I've designed another shirt for him and stuff, so I'm looking forward to seeing the finished product.
I've got the original shirt. I love it, and I am definitely going to be purchasing the new shirt this year. So, very excited about that.
That's cool, yeah. And then there's also something else that's going to be debuted at Heroes and Legends on July 25th. There in Fort Wayne is the Cruiserweight and the Women's title, and the Tag Team titles, and the Heavyweight title. I've designed all of those and helps with Zebro's belts out of Detroit, Michigan.
I didn't know you. I knew for ICW that you did the women's ladies Lucha Libre Championship belt and the ICW World Championship belt. I didn't know that you did the Heroes and Legends belts as well.
Yeah, I've done all those belts and all of ICW's belts. I believe I did the U.S. title that I currently have right here beside me. I have done those, and then I believe August 1st at the ICW show that we're going to be having the Boogeyman at. I believe they are going to debut their new tag team belts, the ICW tag team belts there.
And those are currently held by Simply Irresistible.
Correct.
Yes. So July 25th we've got that, and August 1st we've got ICW in Marion, Indiana. You know, let's talk about your franchise club, the leader of the franchise club, Troy Miller. What does he mean to you, both in the world of professional wrestling and his wife, and he mean to you in your personal lives?
People just throw out Troy Miller's name. The first word that comes to my mind is brother. He's a brother in Christ for one thing, but then also a brother through wrestling, and we've known each other since I started wrestling. Of course, he's probably been doing it quite a few years longer than me, but we run across each other in so many different shows, so many different organizations, and it's just now recently that we've both kind of calmed down and matured a little bit and things like that, that we've been able to put our differences aside. He's been able to bring out a little bit more of a mean streak in me and be able to come together, and so we've formed the franchise club, and him and Libby are some, hold dear place in my heart.
Well, and you know, the franchise club is awesome. You guys hold both the World Championship. Well, I said both. You guys hold the World Championship. You own the U.S. Championship. And Cameron Starr, who's a member of the franchise club, holds the Ladies Lucha Championship. What are your biggest threats in ICW right now?
Our biggest threats in ICW right now, I'd say lack of incompetency of the commissioner, Artie. I'd say lack of competition and the others that are there, and just the overall skill level that the others bring.
Well, you regained the U.S. Championship from Eli McFly, but we didn't know that it was you. You were portraying One-Eyed Willie. Can you tell our listeners how that all went down?
Yeah, it was just a matter of the incompetency of the refs, not seeing my foot on the ropes to begin with, and they went ahead and awarded it to Eli McFly. So I went to him, fairly, and tried to have him watch the video back and say, hey, you could see my foot was clearly on the ropes, then title's mine. No, that's not the way it works around here, that kind of stuff. So, that's just, as Troy was showing me, that's, if they're not taking the rules seriously, then we have to take the gold seriously. So, you just have to bend the rules, find a loophole in the system kind of thing, And so that's what I did is I went in the back and beat the crap out of One-Eye Willie, took his stuff, and jumped in his place and took my title back, I'll say.
And so you had mentioned that on August 1st in Marion, Indiana, for the Intense Championship Wrestling heavyweight title, Troy Miller will be defending and hopefully retaining against former WWE superstar, the Boogeyman. Do you think that Troy's going to be eating any worms that night?
No, just the Boogeyman just be eating humble pie is the only thing. They keep sending in superstar after superstar after superstar for he and I, and we just keep putting them in their place. Some are old and broken down. Others are trying to regain their spotlight. Whatever it might be, they're just not going to run through the franchise club like they think they would.
Well, somebody that the commissioner, Artie Kidwell, sent in to try to take your U.S. championship is neither broken down nor trying to retain a spotlight. He's a tough competitor on national TV every week, and he was also on The Amazing Race. Tell us about your battle with Robbie E.
Well, Robbie E. wasn't one of those normal competitors that they usually bring in, which I was kind of surprised, but not taken back by. Yeah, he did kind of push me to a limit kind of thing, but as you can see, that holding the franchise belt, the U.S. belt right here, the franchise club was successful once again. That's all we have to do is just walk in with the belts and walk out with the belts. That's all we have to do. So Robbie E. was, like I said, a formidable competitor, but just not smart enough that night.
Well, do you know who you're going to be working against on August 1st in Marion, Indiana?
No, I don't care. They haven't sent anything over to me yet. They seem to like to do that at the last minute for me at least. Troy, they of course have to with the posters, all that kind of stuff. But they do send us over about a week before the show. Here's your little contract, sign it, kind of thing, and we go over it, of course. But he already gets to know who he's facing, so I'm not sure on who they're going to set up, and I get to knock down this next time.
Now, one last question before I kick it back over to Will. I've heard that your the manager of the franchise club isn't going to be so angry this time. Have you heard any rumors about that?
Oh, no, I haven't heard that. I mean, maybe they're giving him some tranquilizers or some Xanax or something like that he can chill out a smidge. But no, I haven't heard about that. He's been doing a pretty decent job keeping our papers in order, though. Okay, good. Well, I'm going to kick it over to once again, this is the Undisputed Wrestling Show on the Angry Marks Podcast Network. Check us out at www.theundisputedwrestlingshow.weebly.com. Check us out on Facebook. Check us out on the Twitters. This coming week on July 21st, we've got former superhero in training, Rosie, is scheduled to appear on our show, and he happens to also be Roman Reigns' brother and son of a WWE Hall of Famer. And then on in the second hour, we've got Mastermind Sid Page, who is the head of the La Raza. On the 28th, we've got ECW superstar and the head of IWA Mid-South, which this is going to be an interesting interview. We've got Ian Rotten, and in the second hour, we've got Blue Collar Wrestling out of the Pacific Northwest. We've got manager Paul Moonshine coming on. So we've got a lot of great shows coming up. But right now we are talking to the artist known as Chad Engle, and I'm going to kick it over to the NWA Continental Champion, the Southern Gentleman, the Morning Star, Will Huckabee. Will, what's your next question for Chad Engle?
All right, Chad, let's talk wrestling. How long have you been doing this again?
How long have I been working again?
Yes.
I've been just about 15 years.
Now, 15 years, you've traveled all over the place. You've seen all kinds of things. I've got to ask you this question. Worst experience you've ever had to deal with a promoter? And I'm not talking about the hot dog and the soda. I mean, what is your worst experience you've ever had to deal with when dealing with a promoter or a company?
I'd say the worst one was having a kid that had never been in the ring before, was a backyard wrestler, come in, blow a bunch of smoke up the wrestler's rear, the promoters, and tell him that he could do this and do that, and he was going to promote, the next, 15 shows, they were going to sell out, they were going to become the next WWE in that area and stuff, and the guy told me to go in there and make him look good, and I'm just kind of like, this kid could hurt me, could hurt the rest of your company, that kind of stuff, and, I've been with this guy for a number of shows at that point and stuff, and I just kind of looked at him, and, I did what he wanted, made him look good, but then didn't go back after any of those other shows after that. I just, was kind of taken back by it a little bit. I don't know, that kid never showed up at any other shows after that I think of, but it was just one of those where, I thought that I kept my nose clean, did the right thing throughout the, my tenure there, and the promoter just apparently crapped on it, and so I just kind of lost a lot of respect for him at that point. And I don't know if you ran across that or not, but it's just one of those where, I can do the job for anybody, as long as they have respect for me and the promotion, wrestling in general and stuff. But, this kid come in and talking a high game, and, he was the next Barnum. But I don't know. It frustrated me a little bit.
Oh, I asked you that to ask you this. 15 years, you've seen so many guys come in and go and everything. In your opinion, how has the actual business of professional wrestling changed since you first started?
I think it's changed tremendously, and not necessarily for the best either. When I broke in, it was totally different than when Bob Cook broke in. It's just one of those where I had the money. It was a little easier to get wrestling boots, to get trained, those kinds of things. It wasn't the knock and a secret password to get in, kind of thing. But now it just seems like anybody can go on the internet, buy a ring, anybody can go buy boots, anybody can go buy tights, to get into it. It's just, and everybody hides behind their computers for the most part. As you guys were talking about earlier with Bob about, everybody's crapping on TNA, and it's like, these guys are still on TV every week. They're still getting paid to do what they've loved to do for their entire lives and stuff. That's where, we all strive to be at one point. They're all holding titles. They're carrying a company. They're doing those, things, but, people still, they're not in WWE, and so they're nothing. And if they look at history a little bit, when Vince bought out ECW, WCW, and killed the territories and stuff, there's no competition. And I'm a fan of baseball, but if my team goes against nobody, it's going to be boring to watch. And, I think that's hurt the industry of pro wrestling and the entertainment aspect of it also. But just having people water it down by getting into wrestling and just buying boots and buying rings and setting up in gyms and charging admission and not being properly trained and seeing people get hurt all the time, I think it really hurts the industry and the business and even to cultivate the passion for it later on. I just, I see that's unfortunately where it's heading.
Well, now you mentioned, guys buying boots and everything. And let's talk about as far as promoters and companies and stuff. Because I'm going to assume, when you first broke in, there wasn't, a wrestling company every 3 blocks. Do you miss the days when there was less companies to work for, but the actual business of professional wrestling was more guarded? Or do you like the fact that there are more places for guys to work at every week, week in, week out, and get in front of a live crowd?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's one thing that the franchise, Troy Miller's, he's been training a couple guys, and I've even got to talk with him a couple times. And I'm like, when I went and was training, it was okay, we're going to be doing a show this Saturday. We're going to be doing a show, in 2 weeks from now. Be here for that one. Be here for this one. And so it was kind of, stay close to me. Don't go out and try the things. Don't go to another promotion and try out. But that's one thing that I've told these two guys is like, go out, try to get booked on as many shows as possible. Try new things. Be a heel at this one. Be a face at this one. Try a different entrance music. Try different things just to see what works. Throw it against the wall. If it sticks, use it. If it doesn't, then move on to the next thing. It's going to make them a better performer, and I think that's beneficial to them to have more promotions to work for. But again, on the same aspect of where it was more, garnered and protected back then, it was a lot better product back then than it is now. But, it's definitely easier to get your name out there and to get work, I believe, with the newer, like you said, with every promotion on every 3 blocks.
How important is it for these younger guys? I've been in the business for 8 years and stuff, and I travel extensively and stuff. But how important is it for these younger guys and these green guys in professional wrestling to travel? Do you think that that's emphasized a lot of times in these training facilities? Do you think that majority of the times trainers are telling these guys, hey, stay with this one company, that's it, that's all? Should guys go out there and try to, travel from state to state and lose money doing it when they're green?
Yeah, I think that's part of the, paying the dues kind of thing, where you go out there and travel around. You might have to, as Mick Foley and some of his cliques when he'd traveled, one guy would buy crackers, one guy would buy, tuna and sleep in their cars and stuff. That kind of thing. I think that would, help them a little bit, to travel, spread their wings a little bit, get their name out there. But it is kind of good to be able to basically have a home, so to speak, where you can come back and kind of refresh. Okay, I tried this at this group over in, West Virginia. I'm going to try this over in Illinois. I'm going to try this down in Kentucky, and then come back home and try to put 2 or 3 of those things together and, see if that makes your character a little bit deeper or more colorful, something like that. I think that helps a little bit by getting out there and traveling. Yes.
Zane, what do you have for Chad?
Well, hey, Chad, before we wrap up with you, can you plug all your social media and Chad Engle Art again for us?
Yeah, definitely. You can find me on Facebook at Chad Engle Art, and Twitter, same thing. Instagram, the same thing, at Chad Engle Art. And there's a Store Envy /Chad Engle Art. And as of right now, I was talking with my, she's my wife, but she's my booker, accountant, everything else. And we've talked about possibly redoing basically under a different name because I'm going to start going out and doing different. I did PopCon here in Indianapolis. I did the Comic-Con. Did really well at those by doing live characters, and so I'm going to try to be doing weddings and post-proms and all that kind of stuff by doing live caricatures at those. And but if anybody gets out of hand, then I do know how to wield a chair at the same time. So yeah, it's whatever you can find me under. It'd be under Chad Engle Art.
Now, who would your wife mark out more for, meeting Roddy Piper or Meghan Trainor?
Oh, Meghan Trainor. Anybody have tickets to Meghan Trainor? Because that's who she wants to go see in concert. She, not too sure she knows who Roddy Piper is, unfortunately.
So, other than we've got Heroes of Legends Wrestling coming up on July 25th at the Sport One Parkview Ice House in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And then on August 1st, you will be in action defending your ICW United States Championship. That is at the Boys and Girls Club in Marion, Indiana. Any other events you got coming up soon?
As of right now, I've got another one. Of course, ICW, the first Saturday of every month there in Marion. I've got one here in Lebanon, Indiana on October 24th. I'll be doing a 4-group, and besides that, nothing much else.
Excellent. Do you know if the group in Lebanon needs a really awesome, not too much experience, but really good looking and charismatic ring announcer?
Yeah, possibly. Do you know of one?
I've heard a few names. Ryan Anderson is really good. I like him. So maybe they can book him. If not, they can contact me.
Okay, yeah, I'll throw your name in the ring.
So other than professional wrestling and your artwork, what else do you mark out for?
I pretty much anything that's. I mean, my wife has made me into a big vacation person kind of thing. So cruises, going to the beach. We're planning a Disney trip next. Pretty much any kind of art, really. You know, I mean, I'm not a reader of comics, but, you know, I sat at the Comic-Con and stuff, just looked at the different artists that were there, those kinds of things. I'm a huge fan of Zubas. I don't know if you guys do that or not, but, yeah, that kind of stuff. I like, facial hair. I like that. If it's done well, it looks good, that kind of stuff. But, just kind of, I'm honestly pretty open to just about anything. Somebody wants to suggest something, I'll take a look at it.
Awesome. Hey, Chad, do you want to stick around with us? I was going to ask Will about his last week, or do you need to go take off?
Well, actually, I can stick around for another couple of minutes, but then I have to take off.
Okay, just let us know. Thanks so much, Chad, for being on the show. And everybody, please go check him out. If you're in Fort Wayne at Heroes and Legends 5, definitely go get a caricature done of yourself and buy one of his original artworks of some of your favorite wrestlers. Chad, name some of the pre-made ones that you'll have available that day.
Of course, I know I have Ric Flair, Hulk Hogan, Macho Man Randy Savage. I'll have Razor Ramon, Scott Hall, X-Pac, Cactus Jack, The Rock, Stone Cold Steve Austin. I've even got Bruno Sammartino. I've got Baron Von Raschke. I've got Andre the Giant. So it just kind of depends on, you know, who somebody's looking for. I might have them, and they might be in the works if I don't have them.
Well, that's awesome. That's awesome. And also, please, everybody, check out Drew Skills, who will be defending his championship there that night. Check out his new T-shirt that was drawn by the artist known as Chad Engle, too. So thank you so much for being on tonight.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, Will, you'd mentioned that it's been a long week already, and you feel like a independent wrestler. Tell us what's been going on with you, buddy.
Oh, man, you want to hear how bad my week is? You want to hear what I got going on?
Well, hey, this is your time. Tell us about it.
Oh, man, you know, just living the life of an indie wrestler, you know, booking shows, talking to promoters, dealing with travel and transportation and stuff. I got a lot of big things coming up in the works. Going to Puerto Rico August 15th for EWO down there in Puerto Rico, and just trying to figure out, you know, plane tickets and travel, because I have to be in Knoxville, Tennessee the day before that for Great American Wrestling. And that's on a Friday. And then I have to fly out to Puerto Rico, do the show Saturday in Puerto Rico, then fly out because I have to be in Charlotte for PWX on Sunday. And then I guess, like, in Puerto Rico, and if I'm wrong, somebody please message me on Facebook. This is just what the promoter told me. They're starting an athletic commission in Puerto Rico. And now if you're not like a Puerto Rican citizen, then what you pay like this outrageous licensing fee or something like that. You know, so it's just so complicated. And dealing with vendors and trying to get like T-shirts and pictures and more photo ops and stuff. It's just ridiculous right now. There's just too much stuff going on, you know, canceled shows. And Chad, you know about that, Chad, you know, canceled shows, promoters booking you months ahead of time, and all of a sudden, you know, 2 weeks before the show starts, well, I had to cancel the show. Or promoters, you know, advertising you for shows that you know you're not going to be on. Just things like that. That has been my day so far today.
Hey, Will, I wanted to get your reaction, and Chad, you can chime in too. Will, I was thinking about you. Alberto El Patron, otherwise known as Alberto Del Rio, was scheduled for a big show in Texas this past weekend. And Will, I was thinking about you because it was an autism benefit. He no-showed, and now they're saying that that they have acknowledged, that his people have acknowledged that he was supposed to be there and that he wasn't able to make it. What's your take on that whole situation?
Well, first of all, I've worked for it used to be NWA Houston, now it's Lone Star Championship Wrestling. And I've worked for Tony Brooklyn, and he's a phenomenal person. He's a great promoter. And I also know the guy that he was supposed to work with that night, Houston Carson, who in my opinion is one of the best wrestlers under the age of 30 in the entire country. He's a former NWA North American champion. Great look, amazing wrestler. And that was the match. And from what I was told, that was the marquee match for the night. I heard that Houston had been training extra hard to make sure that he was in shape to give the fans with the match that they wanted. Now, as far as Del Rio not appearing, I was extremely disappointed because I have two sons with autism. So any kind of benefit show that has to do with autism, I'm totally 100% behind. I try to help promote it as much as I can, even though I'm on the other side of the state. I was really disappointed in Alberto Del Rio that he didn't show up. To my knowledge, there still hasn't been a reason why he didn't show up to the show. From what I was told, he had wrestled the show in Mexico the night before, and we all know, Texas might as well be Little Mexico, just right across the border. So there's really no excuse for him not to show up in Houston that night. I'm really waiting. I'm hoping that he has a really good excuse. I am glad to hear that he didn't pass away, that there was no that he didn't die or whatever, because then everybody would have felt like a huge asshole for trash talking him. But I really want to hear his excuse because that was a huge benefit. And the comments that I've read, Lone Star Championship Wrestling issued a press release apologizing to all the fans that had bought tickets to basically see Alberto Del Rio. And reading the comments from a lot of the fans who had bought tickets, a large majority of the tickets, even though there was people bought tickets and stuff to help support autism research, a lot of the fans came there to see Alberto Del Rio. Say that again? Nobody said anything, buddy. Oh, okay. A lot of fans had bought tickets to see Alberto Del Rio, and so people are asking for refunds. It's better than asking for refunds. Some of the people are asking for refunds from the company, but the majority of people are, want to contact Alberto Del Rio and say, hey, listen, we paid our money to come see you wrestle, and you didn't show up. You owe us money for this. My child was crying because they're a huge Alberto Del Rio fan, and then you didn't show up. Major props and huge kudos to Snitsky for stepping in. From what I heard, him and Houston Carson had a phenomenal match anyway. And Tommy Dreamer and a couple of other wrestlers and stuff actually all stepped in and went above and beyond the call of duty when they found out that Alberto Del Rio wasn't going to be there. Do you have any reaction to that, Chad?
Yeah, I've read just a little bit about it, about the Patron not showing, and, it was one of those things where, kind of like Will said, luckily it wasn't where he passed away or anything like that, but I am kind of waiting for, basically the excuse, because it was that benefit show. Just wanted to see, things do happen. Sometimes wrestlers don't show up for, a flat tire or whatever kind of thing, but somebody with his stature, and like Will said, they were there paying to see, Alberto Del Rio or Patron, whatever you want to call him now. That was, the whole reason that half the people bought tickets probably. They wanted to see him, kind of thing, even though it was benefiting autism and stuff, but sometimes people can't, differentiate saying, I want to see Alberto Del Rio versus I'll help autism and I get to see Alberto Del Rio. They just wanted to see him. Those are the people that were wanting their money back and stuff. I just kind of wait for an excuse from him, and hopefully it's a good one.
Zane, you know what? And before you say anything else, I wanted to say that I was, with all this coming out about Alberto Del Rio and stuff, that there was people, making reports that he had basically done the same thing with Ring of Honor and a couple other shows where, like at Ring of Honor, he was scheduled for the meet and greet in San Antonio, and he showed up to the building on time, and then it came time for him to do the meet and greet, and he just refused to go out. He told him he wasn't going to do the meet and greet, and then he left the building and didn't come back until showtime. So I'm hoping that, this guy didn't have a diva fit. But actually, in my opinion, Chad, you can disagree with me or agree with me if you want to. I'm more glad that if he's going to be a diva, that he didn't show up to the event, instead of him coming to the event and doing like some guys do and trying to hold the promoter up for more money, before he goes out there.
Yeah, definitely. I've seen that happen too many times. And I'm glad that it wasn't one of those where, okay, well, you have a packed house out there that want to see me, so you have to line my pockets before I'll step out there. I've seen a couple of the, ex-WWE superstars do that, but then I've even seen some people that, basically I would say would be on the same level as Will and I and do the exact same thing. And I'm just like, there might be a handful of people that paid to see me out there, but, they'd probably rather see me get my teeth kicked in versus me actually being out there to, sell a T-shirt or two, kind of thing. And I'm not going to be able to hold up a show, but, I'm glad that it's not one of those things.
Well, my thoughts on the whole situation was that Beards and Zubaz Hall of Famer Scott Norton was there, so he would have been worth the money alone. Plus, it was going to autism, so hopefully those fans didn't really want refunds, and hopefully Del Rio, El Patron will make it up to those fans and do a free gig for them or something in the future, and hopefully, right.
Do you really think that's what happened, Zane? Really?
I'm hoping so. So, last Thursday, I just want to tell you guys about my week real quick. Last Thursday night, I had the pleasure of driving down to New Albany, Indiana, which might as well be Louisville, Kentucky, and went to a show there that was promoted by Terry Harper. It was not affiliated with any specific company down there. It was a mix of 3 or 4 different companies down there, one of which was the IWA Mid-South. Saw an amazing 3-way tag match where there were no tags. It was a tornado tag match. It was Reed Bentley and John Wade Murdoch versus Corp Robinson and Ian Rotten, who will be our guest in a few weeks, versus the Vikings. It was called In Your Production House. So they had the ring entrance look like the old In Your House WWE pay-per-view gimmick, and I saw Reed Bentley hit one of the Vikings with a lawnmower. It was not turned on, but he hit him pretty hard with a lawnmower. Lots of blood, lots of craziness. Jake the Snake Roberts was there. I got a photo op with him. Got a photo op with Big Van Vader, and I'm a huge fan of both those guys, so that was awesome. My first time ever meeting either of those guys. But I was wearing my Beards and Zubaz shirt out in the entryway, and Mean Mitch Page walks up to me and says, "Oh, I like your pants, and I like your shirt. You like Ribera Steakhouse?" And I was like, "Oh yeah." He's like, "Well, here, come over to my trunk with me." And when a wrestler tells you to come over to his trunk, either he's trying to sell you something or kidnap you. But out of his trunk, he pulled out a genuine Ribera Steakhouse jacket. So he allowed me to put it on and take my picture with it. So I don't have to have you contact Sugar D to have him bring his jacket, because that bucket list item is taken off right now.
I did see that on Facebook. That looked pretty cool.
I was very excited. So
yeah, I saw that. I was like, oh, look at Zane.
All right, guys. Anything else that we need to plug before we wrap up tonight?
Go ahead, Chad. I'm sorry, I guess.
No, go ahead.
Oh, well, this Saturday, I have a pretty light weekend this weekend. I'm traveling down to Georgia once again, wrestling for Platinum Championship Wrestling in Porterville, Georgia. For all of our listeners and fans in the Georgia area stuff, I'll be down there once again with my buddy Joe Black. I'll be defending my NWA Continental Champion, some unfortunate soul, I don't know who. And then, of course, next weekend, I'm going to be making my way to the great state of Indiana, where obviously Will Huckabee has been banned from. And I'm going to find Troy Miller. And Chad, I know that's your buddy and stuff. You might want to tell him to watch out, because I got some words for Troy Miller, and I got some words for, Drew Skip and everybody else.
All right, I'll be there.
All right. Well, once again, thanks to Bob Cook for joining us tonight. Thanks to the Prophet Rick Craig for spending some time with us, and obviously the artist known as Chad Engle. We really appreciate you coming on, and especially coming on a couple weeks ago to help us out. We really appreciate that. And want to thank Stevie J for helping us out so much last week, and wish Killer Kev and his family all the best, and thank you for helping us out once again, Killer Kev, tonight. We really appreciate it. So for the Morningstar Will Huckabee, this is the Bearded Wonder Zane Paisley. Thanks so much, and have a great week.